Hi, this is Sue Cave, one of the authors of Physical French Phonics. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can create teaching resources using the Physical French Phonics resource book and CD. So if you insert a CD into your computer, you'll see that you've got two folders, the interactive files and the interactive whiteboard files. So if you click on that one, you will get something that looks like this. Now within that file, there are gallery items both for Active Inspire and for Smart Notebook. Normally, when you click on them and open it, it will automatically import them into your gallery. The gallery items which are available are, first of all, ones which just have the image, the Physical French Phonic image, with the sound. They have the graphemes listed for that sound, and if you click it, it gives you the sound. Or you've got an image where the two are already combined for you, the image with the graphemes. If you are wanting to create resources in a PowerPoint, then if you go to the folder Interactive Files F1 to F7 and go to the folder Sounds, Actions, Spellings, which includes all the 26 key sounds, you will then find in this folder IMG all the JPEGs, the images of the Physical French Phonics as JPEGs, and in this folder all the MP3 sound files. If for any reason you have problems accessing the CD, maybe you don't have a CD player, if you contact Brilliant Publications at this address that you can see here, info@brilliantpublications.co.uk, and tell them when and where roughly you bought your copy of Physical French Phonics, they will send you a link so you can download the HTML files. So if you are familiar with the Physical French Phonics resource book, you will have seen this 7-step process which is described. This is what I would advocate if you are teaching beginners, if you are starting them off. So when you're introducing some new vocabulary, I would always start identifying the sounds in the words you're about to teach and teaching those, and then getting your learners to blend those sounds to create the whole word. Step 3 is to practice connecting the meaning of the word to the sound of it. Step 4 is to introduce them to the letters which makes those sounds, which you identified in step 1. Step 5 will be spelling that word and practicing reading it. Step 6 is connecting the written word to its meaning. And then step 7 is where you put words together to create a sentence. So let's imagine we're about to teach these 5 colours in French. So step 1 is we'd like to introduce our learners to the sounds within these colours. So I'm going to go to my content here, and I've imported those images and sounds that I showed you that were on the disk. And would like to introduce them to the images for each of the sounds. So I'm going to think now about which are the key sounds in those words. So in bleu, it's so I want that one. For rouge, I would say there are 3 key sounds there. There is the sound, there is the oo sound, and there is the fast car zh sound. It was temporarily lost. Here it is. And in jaune, we've got that same zh sound. We've got the shocked lady sound oh. And in vert, we've got the eh sound, which isn't in any of the other colours, and the sound, which we already have. And in gris, we've got the g, we've got the and then we've got the e, which is the smiley teeth image. So I would create my resource like that. I would say, okay, we're about to learn these colours. These are the key sounds in the colours. I'd put these up and we would have a go at listening to the sound, doing the action that went with it,
E,
and doing the action that went with it. If you want some ideas about activities that you can do to practice these sounds, if you look in the resource book under step 1, you'll find some. One example is the game of Splat, where you have 2 children at the board and you say one of the sounds like oh, and it's the first one to splat the correct image. There are a variety of ready-made resources in the Physical French Phonics resource book, which would be useful for each step of the process. And resource 17 would be particularly useful for this first step. You will find there are the image cards of all the 26 phonemes, which can be printed, and if you're using in class, I'd recommend laminating them. So you create some little cards like this, sets maybe for each group of children. And the activities which are suggested, which you can do with these, are you could give a set to each table and say, let's see which can be the first group to show me the card for, and you say a particular sound like oo or e. Or you could say a selection of sounds, say 3 or 4, and ask the learners to work as a group and order those sounds, the sound cards, across the table in the order in which they hear them. So step 2 is when you want the children to blend the sounds to create the final word. So I would clone the previous slide 1, and so that I've got all the images I want. And then I'm going to arrange them in order next to each of the colours. Now there are some consonants which are the same or practically the same in both French and English, and for those I haven't got an image because I'm hoping that if it's Key Stage 2 we're talking about, or certainly in secondary, that most learners will be familiar with the sounds that those consonants makes. So for bleu, I want to indicate that they need to have a b and a l sound first. So I'm going to put those consonants in. Now in my content, I have created a folder which is consonants, and I've got all the consonants there which I can drag in. This is available to anyone who has a copy of Physical French Phonics. You will have to get in contact with me to obtain this, but I will tell you about that later. So I want a b and a l. So I'm going to put those next to the colour for blue, b and a l, and then on the end I'm going to put the sound for So when the children see that, I want them to go b, l, and then blend that bl with an on the end. For rouge, I will need a ch, and then an oo, and then a j. So I've got all my sounds there. For jaune, I'm going to need that one again, so I'm just going to clone that. J, O, and then I'm going to need the consonant N to put on the end, because that is the last sound they hear in jaune. And then for vert, I need it to start with a V, then an E, and then I just need to clone the and we get vert. And for gris, we've got a G, I just need to clone that again, and E. So I can very quickly create my slide there to introduce the whole word so that learners can pronounce the words correctly. So step 3 is to practice with the children recognizing the combination of blended sounds and what those sounds mean, so that when they hear bleu, they know it's blue, and rouge, and when it means red. And so for that, you can use a variety of activities to practice recognizing the sound of the word with its meaning. So step 4 is when we're going to introduce the learners to the letters that the sounds make. So I'm using that same slide that I used for that I created for step 2, and now I want to create a slide where it has the letter strings that make those sounds in these colour adjectives. So I go to my ready-made, what I call my highlighted letters and consonants. So I need an the letters that make the so I need an EU. I need an OU for oo. I need an E for the E in vert. I need a G for the gorilla. I need a letter I for the E. And for the J sound, I need a J and I need a G before a silent E. For O, I need a U I've got it next to the letter O. They make the same sound. And for the ch, I need the R. And so there quickly I've created a slide so that I can introduce the learners to the letters which are going to make those sounds. And one of the suggestions in the resource book for practicing this is to have a game of phonic bingo. So the learners select maybe 4 of these letter strings and write them down, and then you randomly call out the sounds, and if they think they've got the letters that make those sounds, they tick them off, and when they've got all 4, they say lotto. So the ready-made resources which would be useful to practice this step 4 are the resources 15 and 16. 15 has the images with all the graphemes which make that sound, And 16 has just the graphemes, the letter strings, the graphemes. I would suggest creating double-sided cards for these, and they're set up in the resource book so that if you put them through the printer, they will actually print. They match the correct grapheme to the correct image on the back. And then the sorts of activities you could do for that is you could, well, maybe first of all ask them to just highlight, as I've done here, which is the grapheme that we're looking at, because if it's still in the early stages, they won't have seen the other options. And then you could play an activity very much like the group game we did before, where they have a set of cards, but this time it's the first one to show the correct grapheme card when you say a sound. Or you could distribute those cards which have just got the image on only, that's resource 17, and maybe you could ask the learners, can they recall after a couple of lessons which graphemes made those sounds, and write it on the card. Or you could support them in doing that and then play that activity I suggested a minute ago with these cards, but maybe using these ones it would be less information on the card, which could be distracting, and will make it a little bit simpler in the early stages. So in step 5, we want to introduce the spelling of the word. What I like to do is give the learners this little code, remind them which letters make the sound, and then see if they can spell the word using the code. So I would have the letters there, but then I would hide them. I'm going to hide them here. I've already done rouge and bleu. And so that as we discuss together bleu, we can talk about which letters we think are going to make those sounds and slowly reveal them, and they can write them down on their whiteboards or paper, and they can understand how this spelling is made. So let's have a go at finishing writing the rest of these words. So I've already got j, o, n. Notice that I've got some letters in red and some letters in blue. Anything that's in red or blue, it tells the learners that they need to think about that sound because it's going to be different to English. If it's in black, it's going to be the same in both languages. And if it's in grey, and we're going to need a letter in grey here, it's a silent letter, which needs to be written but not said. So in jaune, we need to put that there. And then I will cover it over because we're going to work it out together, how it's spelt. So for vert, I'm going to need an E, and followed by a letter R. I've lost my letter R for the moment. Here it is. And then we need a silent T on the end. And so there we've got the spelling of vert. Hide that one, and so on, and same for gris. So then there we've created a slide in which we're going to slowly introduce the spellings, and the learners can use this code at the top of the page to help them. So a useful resource for practicing spelling are the resources 18 to 21 in the resource book. There you will find some keywords, days of the week, months of the year, colours, which have been cut up into the phonemes sound, the letter strings for each phonemes, and you can cut these out so that they look like this and have little cards for each of the sets of the words that you are teaching. And then the activities suggested for this is that they could be distributed amongst a group, and each child takes it in turn to put down one of their cards, starting with the first letter that makes the sound of that word, and then the next child, if they can go, puts the next one down, and so on until all their cards are used up. Or you could play a game like Happy Families, where they distribute the cards to everyone on the table and then look and see which cards they've got and which letters are missing, and then they randomly ask someone on the table, have you got the sound, for example, and if someone has got the EU card, they hand it over. Using that slide that you created and revealed all the spellings, this can then be used for practice of reading aloud the words. So if you'd like access to these consonants and silent letters, etc., that I have created as gallery items for smart notebook use, all you have to do is send me a photo of your copy of Physical French Phonics to sue@cavelanguages.co.uk, and I will send you the password so that you can access the area of my website where you will find them and can download them. When you get to step 7, which is putting words into sentences in French, obviously then the learners will encounter liaison, where some of the silent letters are no longer silent but are sounded because a vowel is following. So, for example, if I was writing se, I would have the S and the T in grey because they're silent. But when they are together in a sentence with another word following, such as un, which begins with a vowel, then I would no longer have the T in grey, but I'd be in black, and I normally underline it to indicate that liaison is taking place. The same with des chiens by itself. E would be the hand action for es on the end of a word. But when the word that following is beginning with a vowel, as in éléphant, then that S will now be making the buzzy B sound in the liaison des éléphants, and I would underline it and put the little buzzy bee picture above. Don't forget that on resource 2 there is the silent letter handout, which can be printed out and displayed in the classroom or stuck in the books of the learners, which explains when silent letters occur in French. Also for step 7, for practicing liaison, resource 22 in the resource book, there is this grid for playing bingo or lotto. The idea is that you print some off. It's a good idea if you can laminate them, then you can reuse them several times by using marker pens and then rubbing off after each go. The children would select various squares, so say 4 dogs, 4 chiens, 5 panthers, 5 panthères, 2 spiders, 2 araignées, 9 men, 9 hommes, and then you would randomly call out a number and one of the objects, the chien, the panthère, etc. And if it's the one that they have got a cross in, they circle it, and when they've got all 4, they shout lotto. But what this is doing is giving them practice in recognizing the numbers when they are in liaison and when they are not. And these objects here are chosen because that's a masculine noun beginning with a consonant, that's a feminine noun beginning with a consonant, that's a noun beginning with a vowel, and that's a noun beginning with a silent H. And these resources 11, 12, 13, 14, are indicating how you pronounce un chien, deux chiens, indicating which are the silent letters and then underlining the ones that need to be pronounced. So that could be a display again in the classroom. In Physical French Phonics resource book, it mentions that if you teach the days of the week, the months of the year, 8 colours, 5 numbers and 3 animals, then you will cover all the 26 key phonemes. And I've created some lesson plans and smart notebook resources to teach and introduce those items of vocabulary. And if you would like access to those, all you have to do is send me a photo of your copy of Physical French Phonics and I will give you access to that password area. In that same password area, of course, you will also find those gallery items which I mentioned earlier. Other items which you might find useful for display. I've already mentioned the silent letter chart, but also Resource 1 has got all the 26 phonemes with the graphemes next to them on an A4 handout. And Resource 3 are the same graphemes, but with the IPA, the International Phonetic Symbols, next to them. So those could be useful. You might like to have a wall frieze displayed showing the image, the graphemes which make that sound, and some example words that have the different graphemes within them. There are also some labels for those keywords I mentioned before, the days of the week, etc. So that if you are making a wall display and you've got a colour card and it's blue, if you want a label for it, not only does it have the word, but it has all the images above, which will help the learners recall how to pronounce those words. If you would like to make your own phonics mat, sort of a kind of knowledge organizer for the classroom, you will find in my password area a template like this on which you can add the graphemes. I purposely made it like this so that maybe you want to make a simpler one to start off with your beginners. So for example, this is one I made for year 3. So I've not included all the graphemes, just the ones that they have encountered. Whereas this one for year 5 is more complex because they've encountered more graphemes. So it's got more of them on there. So you can use that template to create your own. So that's it. I hope you found that useful. Here is a slide which gives you information about where you can get some more ideas and support. That is my email address if you want to contact me. I also tweet on Twitter about phonics, and there is my Twitter handle. This page of my website gives you information about those phonics resources I was talking about. If you want to see example of these resources being used within lessons, I created in lockdown some lessons which I recorded and put on the Cave Languages YouTube channel, so you will look at those. This is where you'll find a website about Physical French Phonics. There's a Facebook page and an Instagram page. And if you wish to purchase Physical French Phonics, you can get it from brilliantpublications.co.uk, who are the publisher. And don't forget also that there is a Physical Spanish Phonics resource book.